Inspira Technologies, I know this is one that a few of you have heard about. It's ticker IINN, and we have co-founder, CFO, it's Joe Hayon. Joe, are you out there? How's it going? You are muted, sir. Or
oh, here we go.
There he is.
Thank you.
There's that nice voice.
Thank you very much.
All right, take it away, Joe.
Thanks very much. So Inspira, we're a medical device company operating in a $30 billion respiratory care market. And Inspira is developing the ART device, which is actually an early extracorporeal respiration device, which has the intent to function as an artificial lung. Now, our goal is to minimize the need for mechanical ventilation. Now, the ART has been specially designed to rebalance a patient's saturation levels while they are awake and while they are breathing. And this, in turn, will allow us to potentially prevent the need for mechanical ventilation. Now, like many, I too have had COVID, and it is a pretty frightening experience, as I'm also heading towards my 50s, and I'm very much aware of the complications and risks associated with the deterioration of a COVID patient. But I was fortunately very lucky. I recovered very quickly. But for example, a childhood friend wasn't as lucky and found himself at a young age being intubated and placed on a mechanical ventilator. And, just quoting his family, they reckon he's just very lucky to have survived the treatment. Now, every single year, each year, there are about 20 million people being placed on mechanical ventilation and being intubated. And COVID-19 has only further exposed the high risks and complications associated with this type of treatment. But Inspira's breakthrough technology has the potential to reduce this number significantly. So Inspira is developing the ART, an early extracorporeal respiration support system. And this device is designed to directly oxygenate the blood at an early stage while the patient is awake. Now, by acting as an artificial lung, we are rebalancing the patient's saturation levels to 95% or higher. And we're doing this in around about 1 minute. So by inserting oxygen into the blood and removing CO2 from the blood, we have the potential to minimize the need to go to invasive mechanical ventilation. I would like to share with you all our technology and how our product works.
Most people take breathing for granted.
I think we just lost the sound for the video.
Every breath challenge. Over 400 million people suffer from respiratory insufficiency. Every year, nearly 20 million end up on respiratory life support, and millions die. Doctors facing patients with these treatment challenges administer supplemental oxygen using devices such as nasal cannulas. And when supplemental treatment is insufficient, their only option is to induce coma, intubate, and place the patient on mechanical ventilator that is not only expensive and complex to use, but puts the patient at high risk. This further emphasizes the huge gap between basic respiratory care and an intervention that should be used as a treatment of last resort. Inspira's augmented respiration technology, the ART, bridges this gap, delivering the right level of care. Introducing Inspira ART 500, the solution that immediately boosts oxygen saturation levels. The treatment can be administered by a trained clinician, eliminating the need for ICU-level care. Let's understand how this breakthrough technology works. Inspira's dual lumen cannula is inserted into the jugular vein. Blood with low oxygen saturation is continuously drawn through the cannula's intake lumen into the ART 500. The innovative proprietary ART 500 pump circulates the blood at an optimal rate of 1,000 cc's per minute while preventing thrombosis and hemolysis. The blood flows to the oxygenator, which oxygenates the blood and removes CO2, with only a minimal drop in blood pressure and low shear force, protecting the red blood cells. The oxygenated blood returns through the lumen to the jugular vein. Even though the ART-500 treats blood in low volumes, it can raise the patient's oxygen saturation to 95% or higher within 60 seconds. This device brings immediate relief to the patient while being easy to operate without the need for ICU expertise. Inspira's ART-500 sets the new standard in respiratory care, bringing hope to millions.
So, thank you. So let's just recap. Imagine a patient's being brought into the emergency room and they've got difficulty breathing. The patient will be treated with some type of respiratory assistance. And this could be high flow nasal oxygen and in some cases even BPAP. Now, often the doctors will notice that the patient continues to deteriorate. And it is at this stage they'll be faced with this huge dilemma, whether to intubate the patient, place them on a mechanical ventilator or not. Now, we as Inspira would like to offer the doctors and patients a new pathway. So by directly bypassing and oxygenating the blood and rebalancing the patient's oxygen saturation levels within about a minute, we are providing a capability to prevent going down that pathway to be intubated and placed on a mechanical ventilator. Now, our product comes with many advantages, which include by keeping the patient awake and by not having to go through the injured or sick lungs, we are able to prevent many risks, reduce complications, which in turn will reduce readmissions, hospital burden, and the costs. Now, we're looking at a $30 billion respiratory care market, and the ART is designed to expand this market as our product has been developed to not be dependent on ICU level of care, making it very affordable and easy to use. Now, with an increasing raise in the aging population, the rise in COPD, and respiratory diseases, the ART is both expected to be disruptive and expand the current market, targeting and deploying the system beyond the ICU, including in general medical units, and of course in small rural and urban hospitals. Now, we plan to enter the market using a multi-step approach. So you can see that we're actually going to be using our key components to enter the market and provide a revenue stream already in 2022. Further on in 2023, we will provide and introduce our ART ECLS system. And this system will basically function as our market penetration model as we become more familiar and work hand in hand with leading hospitals. And in 2024, we plan to introduce the ART with a new intent of use to minimize the need for mechanical ventilation. This is expected to grow a very strong market, which is so much in need of a product that can prevent needing to go to intubation and full invasive mechanical ventilation. Now, our business model, of course, is based on disposables. So we have the perfect razor blade business model. Now, one of our potential pathways is to bundle the system with disposables and to deploy it, obviously, in ICUs and beyond. So as a large portion of our revenue will be based on disposables, as we increase deployment and roll out the system, we can expect a growth in income. And we are talking about a potential total addressable market of $20 billion per annum. For reimbursement, Inspira plans to utilize an existing CPT code using a new approach to an existing procedure. We will be working with our leading hospitals to illustrate to the CMS how we can reduce patient complications, reduce costs, length of stay, and of course, staff burden. Inspira's technology is based on both direct blood oxygenation and blood circulation by using circulating blood at a rate of 1,000 cc per minute, with the goal of preventing hemolysis and thrombosis. Now, by treating the blood and oxygenating the blood at a stage where you're maintaining a minimum drop in pressure and a low shear force, we are able to prevent damage to the red blood cells. So despite the fact that we're actually oxygenating a very small quantity of blood, we have the potential to rebalance a patient's oxygen saturation levels and potentially prevent the need for mechanical ventilation. From an IP point of view, our product is built up of several components working together to rebalance a patient's saturation levels. So we're working very hard to both manage and maintain our IP. And this includes an IP not only for components, but for a new intent of use, to use extracorporeal oxygenation or direct blood oxygenation as a method to minimize the need for mechanical ventilation. So we're not only maintaining and managing our IP to look our IP in order to look after our technology, we're also expanding our IP to look after our market. Now, from a regulatory point of view, we too are taking a multi-step approach. As of from the end of this year and throughout 2022, we will be submitting 510K FDA submissions for the different key components. Now, by the end of 2022, we will be filing our ART ECLS system, which will be deployed in 23. And eventually in Q3 2023, we'll be deploying the ART with its new intent of use, with that unique capability of preventing the need for mechanical ventilation. Now, of course, every company needs to have a very strong go-to-market strategy. And we are extremely driven for this to this goal. Now, we're already working towards collaborating and engaging with top societies, ranking hospitals. And we've already collaborated with a leading hospital by the name of Sheba, which is the 9th ranked hospital in the world. They've already exposed our future plans, which include, and I quote, to test a revolutionary respiratory treatment that aids in blood oxidation for severely ill COVID patients. And you can expect to hear more about this in the future. Now, we are preparing the medical community and the medical industry for our disruptive technology. And Inspira has entered multiple discussions with both global medical device companies, global manufacturers, and regional distributors. And this will include potential strategic partnerships with the goal of attaining strategic investments for our next level of go-to-market. Now, alongside, we are also identifying our customers and our applications. And we've identified two main pathways. The one being early saturation in order to prevent the need for mechanical ventilation. But we've also identified how doctors are very much interested in using our product with patients that are on mechanical ventilation in order to reduce risks and complications and potentially get them off the machine a lot quicker. Now, of course, we're looking at the targets ahead. And I think this is extremely important to all our followers and supporters and investors. As we go through 2021, we will, as mentioned, we will be having our first FDA submission. We will be, from that go-to-market point, we will be looking at distribution agreements. Now, 2022 will be a year whereby we will see deployments of our components, a potential maybe strategic agreement, distribution, and of course, we're talking about the submission of our ART system as an ELCLS. Now, 2023, you can expect to see the deployment of our ART ECLS, additional FDA filings for the new ART system with the new intent of use, and we expect by that stage to have additional strategic agreements and collaborations. Now, Inspira has a very bright future. And I think if you look at the market today, many will agree that we're still being discovered by the larger market. We're still being discovered about what the full potential is, understanding what a disruptive business opportunity we hold. Now, COVID-19 has only further exposed both the risks and complications associated with mechanical ventilation. We've seen this both in the hospitals through COVID, and we've seen this through governments, how they've made decisions regarding this type of treatment. The ART has the potential to minimize the need for mechanical ventilation. The ART is both destructive and a game-changing technology, and is both expected to be both affordable and easy to use. And I do want to remind you that it has a total addressable market of about $20 billion per year. Now, Inspira was established with the principles of providing an alternative or to minimize the need for mechanical ventilation. And COVID-19 has only shown how vulnerable patients are and how doctors need different new options for treating patients. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Joe. Good stuff. this is why I love Benzinga events, especially when we're doing a lot of small cap stuff. The amount of innovation that is being discussed at an event like this is amazing. And your company here is certainly another one of those, Joe. And I have a couple quick questions, if you don't mind.
Please.
Mostly about kind of the device itself. So it's called ART. Is this only for emergency situations? Obviously, anytime somebody needs to, get help with oxygen or respiration, it's pretty serious. But I mean, is it, somebody comes into the hospital, to the emergency room, and they need some help right away, or is there further application than that?
So at first stage, yes, we're looking at emergency rooms and then ICUs, but we're specially designed the product to be very much free of certain ICU level standards of care. So it's actually been designed to be used outside of ICUs, general medical units, smaller hospitals, whether they are rural or urban, and further down the line, we could see ourselves in emergency medical services.
Gotcha. Okay. And so the chat is pretty interested by your product here in your company, and a lot of the questions are kind of related to getting the product into a patient. I mean, how is that process? You said that, an advantage is that you can keep the patient awake through the process. I mean, what is it like for somebody getting that? Is it an injection? Is it a syringe, or is it like a sheath into the neck? I saw in the demonstration, there was a patient there. He was talking to his partner and he was talking to the doctor. It seemed like he was okay.
Yeah. So again, our product is yet to be used in humans because we are pre-FDA. But the design for the product is the following: a patient will be brought in, or they would have some kind of respiratory failure, and the doctor would need to make a decision with regard to treatment. So a cannula would be inserted into the inner jugular vein, and this would be a very quick process. And within a minute, it's already circulating the blood. So what it's doing is it's extracting up to 1 liter of blood a minute. This blood goes through a process whereby CO2 is removed. It's getting super saturated, and it's getting circulated back through that same dual lumen. Now, this elevates the oxygen levels, enriches the oxygen within the vein, the venous blood, and therefore basically takes the load off the lungs and down while the patient is still awake without the complications of having to go to intubation and mechanical ventilation. So the treatment's a lot quicker, and then you also don't have to wean the patient off, which means you don't have to go through the process of taking them off the machine.
Sure. So how long can a patient be on the product for? Is it, to get emergency relief and then they can use it for an hour or two, or can they be on it sort of indefinitely as long as they need some help with respiration?
So in most cases, we're looking at taking patients that would normally end up on an invasive mechanical ventilation and giving them a much better alternative.
Sure.
So in most cases, our patient would be on there from a couple of days to a week, and when there are complications, it becomes a couple of weeks.
Gotcha. And is there a scenario where not using ART is preferred? Is there ever an advantage to, mechanical ventilation?
Well, there's always going to be the situation where let's say someone's lungs have collapsed, or specific treatments that will still require mechanical ventilation. But we believe that many patients are actually going down that pathway because there's such a gap today between non-invasive oxygen supplements and invasive mechanical ventilation. They're two extremes.
Sure.
This is where ART comes in and will potentially prevent many going towards invasive mechanical ventilation.
Sure. And I know our audience is always excited about prospects, looking toward the future, having an outlook. And you hinted more than a couple times about, a new intent for use for the device coming sometime in 2023. Any, hint that you can give us what that intent for use might be?
So as I said, there's the ECLS system, which will be used more on acute patients, on patients that are ovulation. But the new intent of use is to have the patient awake, communicative, breathing, using their own lungs. Sure. So there's a very, very big advantage by keeping a patient awake and not actually taking through intubation and then going through their sick lungs. And this is what we're working towards.
Awesome, Joe. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I'm really excited to see what you guys can do with the ART. Inspira Technologies is ticker IINN. Joe Hayon, he's co-founder and CFO. Thanks so much for joining us today, Joe.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good one, sir.